Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson is vowing a response regardless of the outcomes of Gaza talks. Let's take a listen.
The ceasefire talks have nothing to do with Iran's legitimate and legal right to punish the aggressor, and it will not relate directly to it. We're not looking for intensification of insecurity in the region. We support efforts with good intentions regarding the ceasefire. Meanwhile, we insist on Iran's legal right in realizing its right and punishing the aggressor and creating deterrence against a terrorist regime. We will use it at an appropriate time.
I want to turn back to my guest here in studio, Eric Mandel. Eric, Iran had vowed to attack Israel following the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran last month. Despite the anticipation here in Israel and around the world, so far nothing has happened. We heard some Iranian officials suggesting the attack could be delayed if a ceasefire deal is reached. We're hearing something different from the foreign ministry there. I want to get your insight here.
So this is about strategic patience, which Western countries, the United States and Israel, does not have. They have options, and they also don't want to fail. Their attack in April was perceived as a failure. Really nothing came through, although I don't think that's the way it should have been viewed. And President Biden told Netanyahu, take the win. And Israel had a minimum response. And if they don't respond, though, that's also viewed as a failure, isn't it? Well, we don't know. It's not on our timetable. And they have options. It doesn't have to be, we do think it would be from Iran to Israel. That's what the going at the surface level is. But they can go for a softer target. There are Israeli diplomats around the world, and there are Jewish. They think about going back 30 years that Iran with Hezbollah attacked the Argentinian embassy and the Jewish center there. So you have that. So by the way, this all ties in to the hostage deal. The United States' policy is de-escalation. If we could only get a hostage deal, then Iran may not attack now. Hezbollah says it doesn't want to attack. So we must get this and then delay this past the election. So I'm not sure that's much of a strategy, but it is a temporary tactic.
Can we expect the same coalition that we saw back in April when Iran carried out its first major ballistic missile attack against Israel? Egypt has already said that it would not take part in such a coalition.
So I think what they say publicly and what they say, so I've traveled the Middle East, and it's just like when you travel the Middle East, off the record they say that they want Israel to destroy Hamas, but publicly what they say to placate their publics is one thing. So I do, but listen, Egypt and Saudi Arabia and UAE and Bahrain, they see Iran as their primary enemy. It's not Israel. And they don't want this to turn into a regional war that could destabilize their regimes. So I think they would participate. You're talking about England, France, of course, the United States and Israel. But I do think Jordan will be part of it also. Remember, they're going through sovereign Jordanian airspace. The question is, when will this occur? We don't know. But Iran may not want Hezbollah through guardianship of the Jewish. They follow close to their direct orders. They may not want at this time to have a regional war. Again, they have patience.
And you mentioned that Iranian proxy to the north of Israel. I want to turn to Israel's northern border, where Hezbollah has been firing rockets and drones out of Lebanon into northern Israeli communities throughout the day. This morning, an Israeli soldier was killed when the terror group launched 5 explosive-laden drones onto the western Galilee. The Israeli military announced the slain soldier as 45-year-old Chief Warrant Officer Mahmoud Amaria, a tracker in the 300th Baham Regional Brigade. Several other soldiers were also injured, including one seriously. Let's cross over to our correspondent, Zach Anders, who's in northern Israel. Zach, what's the latest where you are?
Hi, Sarah. Good afternoon. We're looking at 5 attacks Hezbollah has claimed responsibility for at this point in the afternoon, including this attack that took place near Yara, which killed, we know, 1 IDF soldier and wounded several others. We're told 1 seriously evacuated to a nearby medical center, still receiving treatment. We're working throughout the afternoon to try and get some updates, but the last 10 months of being up here in the north, we often don't get confirmation as to these serious injuries for some time. So it could be a few days before we know how that recovery is going. We also don't know the names or status of the IDF soldiers who were injured, but we do know the soldier who was killed, Chief Warrant Officer Mahmoud Amaria, 45 years old, part of the 300th Baram Regional Brigade from Ibatin. Now, this is, by my count, based on my notes, the 23rd IDF soldier killed in this northern arena by fire or in action with Hezbollah. The counts differ wildly depending on your source, and I've actually been quite surprised that not many news organizations have been keeping a tracker of the conflict that's been taking place here, to know the numbers and to have confirmation based on what's taking place. All of these IDF fatalities have been lumped together into the Gaza campaign as well. So some, I believe, are being miscounted. Some different news organizations have the number down to 18 or 19. So working to, and my mission for this afternoon is working to go back and reconfirm some of these numbers. We've been keeping track of the names that have come across the headlines, of course, and of what we've been hearing on the ground here in the north, spending as much time as we have over the last 10 months here in northern Israel. So again, 5 months, or 5 attacks rather, that Hezbollah has claimed responsibility for. We know the one this morning at 6:40 a.m. killed the soldier, caused other casualties, but since then we don't have any reports of casualties or damage. And we're sitting here, we've got the border just behind us. We're keeping an eye on things, of course, if it's anything like yesterday and the day before, expecting further attacks later tonight.
And Zach, Hezbollah has been vowing a forceful response for the killing of a senior Hezbollah commander in Beirut last month. So far, we've seen nothing. What are we hearing from the terror group? And is their decision also tied to the ceasefire negotiations as well?
Yeah, and that's building off that conversation you were just having in studio. This is the same thing we're seeing up here, patience. This is the language that's being passed down through the different Telegram channels to Hezbollah men who are receiving some of these messages from Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, who, again, is issuing these veiled threats that there will be a response, but that these responses are meant to exhaust and to wear down Israeli forces that are stationed here in the north, that these cross-border daily attacks are as much a psychological war as they are a physical war, that it's an attempt, Hezbollah has said themselves, to try and put the Israelis that are here defending the north, keep them off guard, and that main attack or that major response for Fuad Shukur's death is still coming and could come at any moment, could be built in to the fold of these cross-border daily attacks. We really can't say what this is going to look like, when it will come. None of the messaging gives any indication that there's a time or a place when this is going to happen.
All right, Zach Anders, thank you very much for that update, and stay safe. I want to turn back to studio where my guest here, Eric Mandel. Eric, you just mentioned there that you were in the north just yesterday. Tell us a little bit about your experience there.
So I've been with units over the last 10 months, 5 times, everywhere. Yesterday I was in Metula, here at Shimon. I've been in the Western Galilee, Margaliot, Kibbutz, Kfar Aza. So I've seen and what goes on. What I think we're losing here is 2 things, besides the obvious reporting of this. Well, number one is that this is psychological terror that's going on, and with the residents who are afraid to go home unless Hezbollah is pushed farther north, and the only way that's going to happen, it's not going to happen, they're going to go to follow 1701 north of Litani River diplomatically. Your government, I understand, may actually accept a much smaller amount, and will the people go back? But they're being terrorized, and what's going on, whether it's this patience, whether it's the people saying, will I ever have a chance to return? But one thing I just want to pick up on, we're talking about how many people were killed. I spent today, again, I put my surgeon hat on, actually. I was in Soroka Hospital, and we forget about the injured. The deaths, you move kind of past that, but there's been, what the chief of the ICU told me today, I was there with soldiers, 1,000 soldiers are being wounded every month on average. And the devastation of what that does to society over time. So I would just say to your viewers, let's not forget about the casualties up there and sort of say somebody was seriously injured and not put it the psychological impact. I was told that 50% of the people who've been injured will need probably long-term psychological services. So these things are devastating on so many levels, and I like to get past the statistics sometimes.
Eric Mandel, thank you very much for your insight today and bringing up a very important point of that post-traumatic stress that very much the entire Israeli public is suffering at this point.